Welcome back to the Geodesign Games. We're going to be looking at where your region will be and what we're going to be doing for each game. So you probably already received an email with an assignment to a particular network. So we're using the North Central, Northeast, South Central, Southeast geographic domains of the U.S. Climate Adaptation Science Center to organize everybody for these games. So they are used to organize the different water resources regions on the right-hand side. So for example, if you are assigned to the South Central network, you'll be looking at the Rio Grande, Texas Gulf, Arkansas, White River water resources regions. And if you're assigned to the North Central network, you'll be looking at Missouri, Upper Mississippi as your water resources regions. And if you're assigned to the Southeast network, you're going to be looking at Tennessee, South Atlantic Gulf, and Lower Mississippi water resources regions. If you're assigned to the Northeast network, you'll be looking at Great Lakes and Ohio water resources regions. We're only looking at the water resource regions that contribute to the Mississippi River and the Gulf of Mexico. That's why some of the other water resource regions are not included. So here's a table that kind of outlines the specific water resource regions that will be within the network that you're assigned to. So initially, we're going to be organizing everybody based on your geographic familiarity. If you have some knowledge about specific network water resources regions, we'll put you in that team. But sometimes in order to balance out the numbers of people in these teams, unfortunately, we might put you in a network that you're not that familiar with. So it will be wonderful if you want to do a little bit of reading on each network. We'll also provide a briefing document and a video on each network in case you don't have time to do some research on your own. So for the first game, we're going to be looking at ways to build up to a consensus-based continental plan. So that's our goal at the end of the first game. And then at the end of the second game, we want to be able to go back to the network plan and realign it with consensus-based continental plan. And then from there to look at ways of creating action plans for each of the water resource regions within your network. And then we'll be using the 6 phases of Geodesign Game for each scale of exploration. So for the first Geodesign Game, for the first hour, we'll be using the network teams, and that's when we'll be proposing interventions and suitable locations for those interventions. And if you're assigned to a network, you will be targeting the water resource regions within your network. And then we will be shuffling the teams, putting you in a continental team to make sure that each continental team has a representative from each network so that you can all bring your knowledge about the previous conversations to the continental team to help create continental alternative plans. And then again, this is the time to propose additional interventions and locations that might form connections across the networks or to resolve any conflicts that might exist between the networks. And then you can also propose new interventions and new locations if you didn't have a chance to do that when you work on the network plans. And then during the third hour, we're going to have each continental team present the intervention and the location that you ended up keeping as your final alternative. And then as we listen to each presentation, we all are going to fill out a quadric survey to assign a score to each alternative we're investigating or listening to. So basically, the first 3 phases of geodesign are all about identifying intervention types and sites. And then if there's any conflicts between these different interventions and their locations, we'll resolve the conflicts. And then, as a team, you're going to prioritize what are the most important interventions and sites you would like to keep and present back to the group. So we will then, based on the first hour, generate these draft network plans. And then the second hour, we'll look at these draft network plans together as a continental team. Go through the same exercise, try to identify intervention types and sites, particularly at the continental scale, or creating connections across networks and resolve any conflicts that might exist across different networks and continentally. And then we're going to prioritize, determine the most important intervention types and sites that we would like to report back during the third hour through your presentation. So out of all the alternative continental plans, we'll use the last 3 phases of geodesign, which basically will allow you to look at the multifunctional performances of the interventions and sites proposed. And then we'll also have to make trade-offs between the different systems and different aspects of the performance, whether it's hydrological, social, economic, and so on. So this will be addressed through the survey questions. So all you need to do is to listen to the presentation and answer the survey questions. So after that, we will use the survey results, all the scores from your responses, to determine the most important intervention types and locations that we will be keeping in the final consensus-based continental plan. And then we will share that with everyone during the second game. During the second game, we're going to stick to that consensus-based continental plan and use that to revise the draft network plan that we came up with during the first hour of game 1 to make sure that the network plan is realigned with the consensus-based continental plan. And then from there, we will use the final network plan to inform what we're going to do for the regional plan for each of the water resources region within your network. For example, for the South Central network, you have 3 water resources regions. Same with the Southeast network. For the Northeast and the North Central, you only have 2. So we have more people assigned to the South Central and Southeast network teams for that reason. So during the game 2, the first hour is about realigning network plans with the consensus-based continental plan. During the second hour is about using this final network plan to inform actions in the specific water resources regions within your network. And then you'll present that back to the group, and then everybody's going to complete survey questions to evaluate what you come up with, so that we can come up with final regional plan components, the specific interventions and locations that are the most important, and use that to really inform game 3. So here's kind of a summary of what comes out of part 1, part 2, and part 3 of Geodesign Game. You can see how we start with consensus-based continental plan, final network plan, after the revision to make it align with the consensus continental plan, and then we go from there to inform what to do with the water resources regions and make sure that we have a final regional plan for each of the water resource regions based on the survey results. So it's the same 6 phases of geodesign that we'll be following as we go through the 3 parts for game 2. It's about coming up with alternatives, identifying interventions and locations during the first 3 phases. And then the last 3 phases are about looking at all the alternatives and assigning evaluation scores to assess the performances of the different interventions and locations, so that we can consolidate alternatives and pick and choose different interventions and locations within these alternatives to form a final regional plan that has the most high performing and important intervention and locations included. So game 3 is going to take the consensus-based water resources region plan that has the most important high-performing interventions and locations. And then we're going to choose 2 locations that are the most important focus areas to develop designs for. So you'll have the opportunity to create a full-blown design for each focus area that's considered the most important out of each water resource region. And then we'll have everybody present their design for their focus area, and then we'll fill out a survey again in order to evaluate the performances of the interventions and the locations of those focus area plans. So the first part of game 3 is all about the first 3 phases of geodesign that basically allow us to identify intervention types and locations and prioritizing which ones are the most important to consider. And then the second part is all about going through the different social, economic, hydrological, ecological performance evaluation questions so that we can really optimize the plan for its multi-system performances. And then we'll use the scores from the survey to determine what's going to stay in each of the focus area plans. So we look forward to having you at the games. See you in the next video.